Well, hello class, and welcome to, I guess we're in the middle of Unit 6. Hey, I just wanted to really briefly share a couple thoughts. The first thing I would say is I've been really impressed with the way you're thinking, a lot of the content that you've been sharing, the conversations you've been having throughout our semester, the questions you're asking, and just kind of the way that you're processing this content has been great. I was sitting next to a former student of mine who took this very class 6.5 years ago, I want to say, and now we are colleagues, and we are teaching in the same department and doing a lot of the same work. And it was just kind of an enjoyable, it was an enjoyable time to be next to this individual who was a student of mine and then is now, kind of has this common language that we can relate to with regard to career development. So maybe at some point, I've had a number of other students that are interested in, maybe teaching at some point, and maybe that's you, and maybe this is a class that you really like to kind of focus in on and might even have opportunities to do elsewhere than APU in the future. So thanks for your commitment. You continue to do good work. Obviously, we're in the middle of week or Unit 6, so a couple of housekeeping things. Keep in mind that next week we begin Unit 7. Okay, so when we go for 1 week, and then you have a week off. So some of you would ask some questions. Well, why do we have? You can see that it says Unit 7.1 and then Unit 7.2, and that's because in the middle of those two units is our Thanksgiving break. Okay, so if you look at the schedule, you will notice that starting on the 13th of November, which is on Monday of next week, you go through the 19th. And then you have Thanksgiving break from November 20th to the 26th, and then you start back up again in the same unit, November 27th. We talked about this, but I want to remind you of this reality, okay? So as you're thinking about what's expected of you, operate on the same time frame, okay? So doing the content that's due at the end of the first week of the unit, and then do the content that's due at the end of the second week of the unit, just like you would in a normal unit. However, we just happen to have in the middle of Unit 7, Thanksgiving break, and I don't, if you're able to stay away from the online classrooms, then that's all the better, right? So okay, so this week we are continuing on. We've got our case study number 8. You've got your Unit 6 forum discussion, and of course you are finalizing your vocation and calling response paper. I really do hope that you have enjoyed that assignment, or at least the reading. Maybe you haven't started the book yet, but I wanted to just kind of hit on a couple of things. So if you look in Sakai, you will notice that under the course lounge, I think it is, it's a bit of a dated video. I think I did it maybe a year or two ago, but you will see that there is a video under the forum section at the very top titled APA Overview Video. I want to encourage you to spend some time watching this video. I think it's maybe, 12 or 15 minutes long. But it will save you a lot of heartache. It will save you a lot of challenges that come your way, and I think it will probably help to improve your overall grades. So I do find that oftentimes when I'm grading papers like this one that's coming up, students, there are a couple things that happen. They miss out on points by writing bad papers, right? Grammatically, spelling-wise, their structure is off, things like that. That removes points, that detracts points from the overall grade. That's one thing that occurs. The other thing that I find, how do I say this, that students, they miss on is they don't write the paper properly, okay? So it becomes an opinion paper, and I don't want an opinion paper. Their formatting is off. I really want you to spend some time on this, okay? So, and there's some very easy fixes. One of the easiest ways is to just catch the red and I think it's some computers, the red and green lines that show incorrect spelling and incorrect grammar. Sometimes it might be purple, but proofread your papers. And I would say proofread them, and then proofread them again, proofread again, and then I would say walk away, go for a walk, go get dinner, lunch, breakfast, whatever it is, and then come back and proofread it 1 or 2 more times. I'll give you an example. I just sent a flyer out to the entire university community. I have an event for one of the programs that I work with on Thursday of this week. So big event coming up on Thursday, and I sent an invite on Okay, so it was yesterday. And I said, you're invited to this event. And I had multiple people look at it to make sure that the information was correct. I looked at it. I probably sat there staring at this paper for 20 or 30 minutes before I sent it. I had my graduate assistant look at it multiple times. I had an admin assistant. I had an executive assistant. And I had some additional folks looking at this document. Well, we sent it out. Everything seemed fine. We sent it out. And immediately after hitting send, of course, then we caught that I had put 2018 on the invite instead of, which makes more sense, 2017. I'm not going to invite you to something a year away, but we didn't catch that mistake. So I say that because I think it's really important that we proofread what it is that we submit multiple times and have multiple eyes look at it and so forth. So if you have a roommate or a spouse or a next door neighbor, or a really mature child, that can read well, have them look at it and say, hey, is this written well? Do you notice anything wrong? Have them read it on the computer so they can see the little squiggly lines underneath the words that are misspelled or the sentences that are grammatically incorrect and so forth. Okay, so proofread those papers a lot. Okay, read through the assignment. Really make sure that you pore over what I'm asking for you in the assignment. The other thing I'll mention is if you look to the actual assignment in Sakai, you will notice that, in the syllabus I should say, you'll notice that there's a rubric in the midst of that syllabus, okay? So you will also notice that in the vocation and calling analysis paper assignment in Sakai, there is a video in there, okay? And that video will take you, when you watch it, it will again provide an overview of the assignment. And you will also notice, I would encourage you to watch that, you'll also notice that attached is the vocation and calling paper description. And in there is a Word version of the rubric that you'll see in the PDF version of our syllabus. You must include that Word version, just the Word version of the rubric. Okay, so copy and paste the rubric, put that at the end of your paper, okay, put it at the end of your paper, and then you're going to give yourself a grade on all of the different areas that are laid out for you in the syllabus, okay? Here's why I want you to do that. I want you to be conscientious of where you've made your mistakes. So do you believe that you deserved full credit? Well, if you did, then I want you to then go back and compare what you believe you deserve to your paper and vice versa. So, and then the other thing I would say is if you don't believe you deserve full credit, then go back and change it. I mean, go back and make some adjustments so that you can feel that you've done your best on that assignment, okay? So this has to be completed, this rubric, okay? It's helpful because it allows you to kind of compare the work that you've done with what's expected of you. This will help you in your grammar and your spelling because there's all sorts of questions about that. But you have to include it at the end of your paper and you have to give yourself a score. So you'll see that there's a section that totals how many points are available in each of these different areas. And then on the far right, you'll enter in your score. So if you do the PDF version, it may not copy and paste properly. So that's why I've given you the attachment there in the assignment itself for this rubric. Make sure it's included at the end of your assignment, okay? So please keep that in mind. It's very, very important. And it will be something that happens every semester. People don't include it in their papers, and you'll have to do the same thing in your final assignment. And every semester, in not doing that, students lose points, and it takes them down oftentimes from where they wanted to be and puts them in a place where they're not all that thrilled to be. So please make sure that you include that, and please make sure you proofread. And then I would say please make sure you proofread a little bit more, and then of course proofread some more. Okay. So that is some just cover that I want to talk about for that paper itself. All right. Okay, so let's look now, going back to Unit 5, okay? And I want to talk about some questions that were asked. I think that one of them I did address, I think I actually got pretty specific. So how is career counseling and school-based guidance counseling similar or different? I think there's definitely some similarities in there. You're talking about career, but really you're talking about more kind of career, I should say college counseling. So how do I get into college? And here's, maybe this is a soapbox of mine, but the reality is that I think our high school folks, and if you have students that are in high school right now, our high school counselors are so focused on really two things. They're focused on SAT scores and GPA. And so I think that in certain schools, even if you ask the question, not what are you going to do after high school, but where are you going to go to college? And so I think that there is something to be said about those that say, I'm not sure if I'm going to college, or I'm going to take a gap year, or I'm going to, do something. I'm going to go straight to work. My parents own a business. I'm going to go work for them. So I think that guidance counseling at the school system is not always this way, but I think it's much more focused on we want to get students into colleges, or yeah, I mean, not always, but again, I think there's definitely a focus there. Whereas career, this is going to be more related to folks that are out of college or out of high school that maybe didn't go on to college. And so how do we help them make decisions from a vocational standpoint, or not even vocational, I shouldn't say that, from a career standpoint that's going to end up coming back and benefiting them. So that's a great question, though. I think it's an important question, and I'm glad that it was asked, because there are some similarities, but there's certainly, I would say, some significant differences that are in the mix with all those things. There's some other questions about why don't in some of these intake assessments and the work that we're being shown in examples in LipTech, and why is there not any questions having to do with spirituality, or in some circumstances, why is there not a lot having to do with culture or intercultural competency, or culture, multiculturalism, or ethnicity, background, and so forth? And I can't speak to that answer necessarily because I'm not the author of the texts. But I can say that I think that what you'll see, much like we, as we talked about, we bring our biases to the conversation at the table. I think there's others that are going to bring biases, and perhaps they're going to be more focused on other areas. So, one of the great things that we've looked at so far is there are a number of theories in this field, much like there are in traditional clinical psychology. There's a number of theories. There's a number of techniques, and so everyone, you've probably noticed that many of these techniques and theories are attached to people's names, and so it's specific to the people that have come up with these theories and techniques. They're saying, well, this is clearly the best way for us to get what we need to accomplish. Well, it's a good way, but I don't know if we can say that it's the best way, because we don't know what's best for our clients. So I think that it's important that we're fully informed, that we're well versed in lots of different options. But then the more we get to know our clients, the better we get to know kind of what it is they need and what they want, and what's going to benefit them in the work that we're doing. I think I can say, I don't know if definitively, but I think I can definitely say when there's questions having to do with why is there not more focus on spirituality or faith practices or so forth. And I think it's just that most of the people that are writing these books, that are thinking about these things, are either not coming from that background or perspective, or they're writing textbooks that are not for that audience. Now, I think that's really quite tragic, because regardless of someone's faith or otherwise, there's people that would say they're spiritual beings. I'm not a religious person, but I'm spiritual. But I think it's hard to get around the fact that we all have a spiritual psyche to us. There's an aspect to us, and for those who are Christian, that's kind of that's the lens through which we see things. And there's ways to get at, so how can we make the most of, this faith influence? How can I traffic in biblical vernacular and yet not always put the Bible verse, but how can I look at these principles that are going to benefit the greater whole of society? This idea of common grace for the common good. One last thing I'll say is, when we read that book, Well-Being, I'm often asked, why was there not a sixth element, and that being spiritual well-being? And again, I think it's just because the authors, that's not their perspective. It's not the background or the influence they bring to the table. But I think it's, when you think about it, if I'm doing well spiritually, if my faith is in a good spot, if my soul is well, then I think that that's going to affect every other aspect in places. It'll make me more content, and I'll actually bring meaning then to my work. So we have to look at all these factors. And some people come from different perspectives and faith backgrounds, and others don't. And how do we write text, and how do we do work that's going to speak to everybody, but then at the same time pull from some of these areas that really are meaningful for the masses? So great questions. Enjoy your paper. I'm looking forward to reading them, and we will see you online this week.